Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we are having lecture on media ethics, and today is the last lecture in the series of lecture on media ethics, and we will talk about the contemporary journalism has thrown a number of challenges like reporting disaster, terrorism, and there are various occasions we face the dilemma, and also how to deal with an interview. There are ethics to be maintained while talking to someone, interviewing. So on this issue, and there are many lesser known issues on which we will talk about. And for discussion, we have in the studio Dr. Anand Pradhan. He is Associate Professor at IMC New Delhi. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Pradhan for EduSet lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Amarendra ji, and it's very stimulating and interesting discussion on media ethics. Let me first begin with extending my heartfelt good afternoon to you all, my viewers, faculty members and students. So today we will discuss certain issues related to media ethics, and particularly we have already discussed so many issues related to media ethics. Today I will focus on some very important issues which in recent years came to limelight and also taking lot of attention of media practitioners as well as policymakers. But let us begin with a very interesting subject, that is interview. As you know, in journalism, interviewing is basically the bread and butter for any journalist. For every story, every news story, you have to interview people, because without interviewing, which means without gathering information from different sources, you cannot do a story. So interviewing is very important part of journalism. So there are certain ethical issues involved with interviewing, and today I will discuss, because nowadays you must be watching so many interviews on television channels, discussion programs, and in one-to-one interview program also, and also sound bites which regularly appear in news stories, and also you may be reading interviews in newspapers. So what are the ethical issues involved in interviewing, and what are the responsibility of interviewer while interviewing an interviewee? So let us first start discussing about conducting an interview. As you all know, interviews may be searching, sharp, skeptical, but partially, but not partial, discourteous, or showing an attachment to one side of an argument. So you can do your interview which may be very searching, very sharp, very focused, and sometimes it may appear that you are also combating your interviewee. Whenever particularly the public official who are not ready to share information, or who you may think that hiding information. So in those cases, your interview may be very searching, sharp, skeptical, and also sometimes very hard hitting. But remember, the rule with interviewing is never be partial, never be discourteous, and never show an attachment to one side of an argument. Suppose if you are conducting interview or you are conducting a discussion program where two sides of opinion are expressed, you should not take side with one interviewee and combat another one. In fact, you should be impartial to both sides while interviewing your interviewee. Secondly, interviewees should be given fair chance to set out their full response to a question. And it's a very serious problem nowadays in interviewing. Actually, what happens nowadays, particularly on television channels, you must be watching, and it's sometimes very irritating also as a viewer. Even I sometimes feel very irritated the way our interviewers and the program host are conducting their interviews. Whenever you ask a question to your interviewee, allow him to respond. Allow him to respond in a manner where he can express his full view about that subject or issue or your question. But what happens, without listening the full answer of that person or interviewee, a journalist immediately start raising second question, or they regularly interrupting the interviewee. This is, I think, very irritating, and it's very important that interviewees should be given fair chance to set out their full response to a question. The second issue is, if an interviewee refuses to give an interview unless questions are rigidly agreed in advance or unless certain subjects are avoided, it may be worth not proceeding with the interview. And it's basically editorial guideline. It's not really ethical or directly related to ethics, but it's basically about whenever your interviewee with whom you want to conduct an interview, if he is insisting that before start of the interview you must give him full questionnaire, or if he is insisting that he would like to listen the interview again before going on air, then it is always better that if he is insisting on, or if he is so rigid about that, which means he is or she is trying to limit the scope of the interview. So you should not agree to those conditions, and instead it would be better that you should not proceed with that interview at all. Some interviews are not meant to be challenging, but to inform, explain, or entertain. People interviewed as eyewitness or as experts may need to be encouraged rather than challenged. So in all interviews, whenever you are interviewing someone, not all interviews are where you should be combative, you should be challenging that person, or you should be asking very probing questions. So sometimes when you interview victims, sometimes when you interview very common people, sometimes you interview expert, you should not be very challenging to them. You should not be asking probing question to your experts or your victims. Instead of doing this, you should ask simple question and allow them to explain their situation or position, or explain a certain thing to your audiences. There are certain other things. It is important interviewees know why they are being invited for interview, what subjects they are going to be asked about, the context of the program, and the sort of part they will play in it. So before going for interview, you must explain your interviewee that why you want to interview him or her. You also explain how you would like to use that interview in your program. You also, and it's very important, it's ethical, you must explain the subjects and issues on which you want to interview him or her, and also what kind of role you are looking for your interviewee in that program or story. Next important ethical consideration or editorial consideration is, do not interrupt too much, but evasions should be exposed coolly and politely, if necessary, by repeating the question and explaining to the interviewee and the audience why the previous answer has not dealt with the question. So, as I have already suggested, that do not repeat or interrupt too much. But also, if someone is avoiding a question, and if he is or she is public official, maybe politician or a cabinet minister or a bureaucrat, so if he or she is avoiding a question, not directly answering your question, in that case you may, but always remember, you should be polite. You should you may be asking very probing question, you may be asking very searching question, you may be very straightforward, but you should not be abusive. You should not interrupt too much, and try to expose that person in a way which send a signal to your audiences. And also remember that you must explain why the interview is not answering your question directly. But now I would analyze, or I would like to give provide you certain examples here. But before discussing or listening to that example, I would like to make certain points related to interview. Do not provide exact question. Do not repeat same question again and again. Sometimes what happens when you are interviewing someone, particularly the public official, ministers, bureaucrats who are heading organization, public organization, and they may be avoiding questions. But you should not ask same question again and again. Why I am saying this? Sometimes we have seen this tendency in our journalists that they start behaving like judges. They start behaving like investigative agencies. They start behaving like a police officer who are who behave in a manner where they are interviewing, or they are in fact interrogating people. So never interrogate your interviewee. Instead of, you ask same question in a and you may ask same question 2 or 3 times, but you should not ask more than that. And also, when you are repeating that question, you should rephrase that question, so that sometimes it may happen that your interview may not have understand your question. So rephrasing that question may allow that person to answer or respond. But sometimes what happens, people generally try to avoid, and in certain times journalists also start behaving like judges or police officers or investigative agencies. Here I would like to show you a very interesting clip from BBC television, where a very famous anchor person of BBC Home Service, Jeremy Paxman, interviewed the Britain Home Minister Michael Howard, and he was asking same question again and again, and you yourself see how many times he asked the same question, and it's a very interesting video. So and it's also shows, because after the broadcast of this program, there was a great debate about how Jeremy Paxman, the interviewer, behaved with the interviewee Michael Howard, who was the Home Minister of Britain at that time. So let us first listen that interview, and then we will return and discuss this subject.
For me to take, after terrorists had escaped from Whitemore, other dangerous prisoners had escaped from Parkhurst, and an independent report had found that there were serious weaknesses in the management of the prison service from top to bottom.
Is there anything you would wish to change about your statement to the House of Commons, or any other public statement you made about this matter?
No, nothing.
Not a word.
I gave a full account of what had happened in relation to my decision.
Right. Can you help us with this then? You stated in your statement that the leader of the opposition had said that I, that is you, personally told Mr. Lewis the Governor of Parkhurst should be suspended immediately, that when Mr. Lewis objected, as it was an operational matter, I threatened to instruct him to do it. Derek Lewis says, Howard had certainly told me that the Governor of Parkhurst should be suspended and had threatened to overrule me. Are you saying Mr. Lewis is lying?
I have given a full account of this, and the position is what I told the House of Commons. And let me tell you what the position is.
So you are saying that Mr. Lewis lied?
Let me tell you exactly what the position is. I was entitled to be consulted,
yes,
and I was consulted. I was entitled to express an opinion. I did express an opinion. I was not entitled to instruct Derek Lewis what to do, and I did not instruct him what to do. And you will understand and recall that Mr. Marriott was not suspended. He was moved and Derek Lewis told the Select Committee of the House of Commons that it was his opinion, Derek Lewis's opinion, that he should be moved immediately. That is what happened.
Mr. Lewis says, I, that is Mr. Lewis, told him what we had decided about Marriott and why. He, that is you, exploded. Simply moving the governor was politically unpalatable. It sounded indecisive. It would be seen as a fudge. If I did not change my mind and suspend Marriott, he would have to consider overruling me.
Mr. Marriott,
You can't both be right.
Mr. Marriott was not suspended. I was entitled to express my views. I was entitled to be consulted.
Did you threaten to overrule
I
him?
was not entitled to instruct Derek Lewis, and I did not instruct him. And
Did you threaten to overrule
the
him?
truth of the matter is that Mr. Marriott was not suspended.
Did you
I did
threaten
not
to overrule him?
I did not overrule Derek
Did you
Lewis.
threaten to overrule him?
I took advice on what I could or could not
Did
do,
you threaten
and
to
I
overrule him,
acted
Mr. Howard?
scrupulously in accordance with that advice. I did not overrule Derek
Did you
Lewis.
threaten to overrule
Mr.
him?
Marriott was not suspended.
Did you threaten to overrule him?
I have accounted for my decision to dismiss Derek Lewis
Did you threaten
in
to
great
overrule him?
detail before the House of Commons.
I note you're not answering the question whether you threatened
Well,
to overrule him.
The important aspect of this, which is very clear to bear in mind,
I'm sorry, I'm going to be
is
frightfully
this.
rude, but,
Yes, you
but
can-
I'm sorry. It's a
You
quite
can put-
straight
you
yes
can
or
put the
no.
question, and I
It's a
would
straight
give
yes or
you-
no
I would give
answer.
you an
Did you
answer.
threaten to overrule him?
I discussed this matter with Derek Lewis. I gave him the benefit of my opinion. I gave him the benefit of my opinion in strong language. But I did not instruct him because I was not entitled to instruct him. I was entitled to express my opinion, and that is what I did.
With respect, that is not answering the question of whether you threatened to overrule him.
It's dealing with the relevant point, which is what I was entitled to do and what I was not entitled to do. And I have dealt with this in detail before the House of Commons and before the Select Committee.
But with respect, you haven't answered the question of whether you threatened to overrule him.
Well, you see, the question is, what was I entitled to do and what was I not entitled to do? I was not entitled to instruct him, and I did not do that.
Right. We'll leave that aspect there and move on to this question of your bid for the...
So, this was the interview conducted by Jeremy Paxman in BBC Home Service program News Tonight, where he was asking same question, and if you have counted that, he asked same question 12 times to the Home Minister of Britain. After this interview, there was a debate in Britain about the ethical norms of interviewing. And the main question, there was two sides, of course. One side was saying that yes, because Home Minister was not answering directly to that question, and Jeremy Paxman was entitled to ask same question because Minister was avoiding that question, and many people were praising Jeremy Paxman that he was doing a great job when he was asking very probing, very searching question to Mr. Michael Howard, Home Minister at that time in Britain. But there were other journalists and the media critics who said that it is not the job of Jeremy Paxman, the journalist, to ask same question again and again. He is not an interrogator, he is not judge, he is not police officer. How can he ask same question again and again and 12 times? It was very abusive. He was in fact humiliating the Home Minister, and the discussion about this interview was when a journalist have asked one question 2 times, 3 times, he may have rephrased the same question in a different manner, but he cannot ask same question more than 4 or 5 or 6 times. It's too much, because what is the job of journalist? The job of journalist, he is asking those questions on behalf of his audiences, and their audiences are smart enough, they are intellectuals, they can understand if minister is not answering question directly, and if he is avoiding that question, audiences will understand that Mr. Home Minister is trying to hide something, and that is the purpose of interview. So you should not behave like a judge or like a investigative officer. It is not the job of journalist. So always remember, it's important that you should not irritate or ask same question again and again, and never try to be discourteous to your interviewee. Be polite, courteous, but straightforward, firm and focused. Never abuse interviewee. And particularly these days on our television channels, particularly you must have watched, in many programs, our interviewer, the journalist, are sometimes abusing, sometimes behaving in a very humiliating manner with interviewee. I think this is not ethical. This is not in the best interest of good practices of journalism. So they should avoid this. Now I am coming to the second issue, election coverage. How to cover election stories, or how to cover election. As you know, in democracy, elections are very important part and parcel of democracy. Through election, you choose your representatives. People are choosing their representatives. So, and particularly during the election time, the news channels or the newspapers and the news organizations are sometimes criticized for their biased, partial and favoritism while reporting election stories. So what to do in election coverage? What are the ethical norms? What are the good practices? What are the editorial guidelines related to election coverage? Let us discuss one by one. The public is entitled to hear the principal point of view of the various parties on all questions of importance. So while you are covering an election, it is important to understand that public, the audiences, are entitled to hear all side of views, and particularly the principal point of view of the various political parties on all questions of importance. Secondly, broadcasters should provide credible, balanced and impartial accounts of issues so voters can make up their minds. Because as a journalist, you are reporting, informing, educating your voters, audiences who are supposed to select their best candidates, and according to their policies, according to their principles. So whenever you are reporting in election, your reporting must be very credible, balanced and impartial. It should not take any side, so that your audiences should get and they should get basically credible information, basically balanced information, basically all sides of the information. Thirdly, broadcasting must not fall under the control of individuals or organized pressure groups who are influential either because of their wealth, family connections or their special position. So while reporting about a constituency or a political party, you should not give undue favor to someone who may be close to you, or who may be close to your news organization, or who may be wealthy, who may be spending too much money on advertisements, and that is why you are giving undue coverage to that person. You should avoid that, because during the election, balanced reporting and not taking side is very important. Fourthly, a news item should be chosen for its importance and not because some outside source has ordered it to be included. It should provide a thorough examination of the views, policies and campaigns of all the main political parties. So whenever you are doing some election programming or covering the election, your aim of the program should be analyzing the policies and the manifesto of all political parties in a critical manner. You should not take sides, or you should not give undue coverage to one political party. Instead, you should take views, policies and campaigns of all political parties. Comprehensive, and there are four things you must remember while reporting in elections. It should be comprehensive, it should be authoritative, it should be impartial, and you must follow fairness while reporting. What is comprehensiveness? Give audience as much information as possible, providing them with full range of significant views. Authoritative. The audience should receive a clear picture of the weight of opinion on either side of the argument. Suppose on food security, what different political parties are saying in their manifesto, or what their political leaders are saying in their election rallies or campaigns. You must give all opinions on a particular issue, what other political parties are thinking. You must be impartial. I am repeating same thing, but it's important to understand while reporting particularly the elections. Journalists covering the campaign must not express a view for or against the issue being put before the public. Never take sides. And fairness. The view of all political parties and dissenting groups within them must be accurately reflected. You should not distort. You should not interfere, and you should properly attribute every statement of a political party. You should not add anything which is not said. And that is why during the election times you must have heard that many a times political parties and their leaders are complaining to media that they have distorted their statements, and because they have distorted their statement or they have added something in their statement, it created problem for those political parties. They have to explain, they have to sometimes deny those statements. It also dents your credibility as a news organization. So during election coverage, because elections are very important part and parcel of democracy, that is how we practice democracy. So during election time, you must be very careful. You should not take side. Your reporting should be balanced. Your reporting must be impartial, and it should be comprehensive. Now, covering religion, as you know, it's a very sensitive issue. Religion is really very sensitive issue. And why I am discussing this? Because India is a multicultural, multi-religious country. So in multicultural societies, religious programming should reflect a mix of faiths in a particular country. But the news organization should not support any one religion over another, nor provide a medium for one religion to denigrate another. And it's very important, because whenever you play with religion, whenever you do anything wrong, even if it is ethically not correct, and in some cases wherever you crossing Lakshman Rekha, you may not face severe consequences. But whenever you are dealing with religion and you cross the Lakshman Rekha, you cross the ethical lines, then there are severe consequences. There may be riots, there may be communal disturbances, there may be protests. So be always very sensitive and careful whenever handling a story related to religions. So always take, and there are two rules: never take sides, and also never allow one religion to denigrate another one, and never support one religion and oppose another religion. You should be very impartial, fair and balanced while reporting religion. Also, references to religion should be presented accurately and in a dignified manner. So whenever you are referring anything from a religion, you should be very accurate. You must check whatever you are saying about that religion. There should not be, there is no scope for any mistake while dealing with religion, because these are very sensitive and inflammable issues. And you must, whatever you are saying about religion, you must say it in a very dignified manner. Also, programs that denigrate or satirize any racial or religious group should not be broadcasted. So whenever any ethnic group or a caste or a community or religious group, you should not denigrate or say anything satirical about them, because that may create problem. And we have lot of cases even in India. I don't want to share those cases because those are very sensitive issue, and it takes more time, because I mean take more time to explain those things. Without explaining those things, mentioning those issues may create again problem. But I will give one example, particularly one radio station, music radio station, when they said about one ethnic group from Northeast, some very abusive word about that. And what happened after that in northeastern states, particularly in Darjeeling, there was a lot of uproar and protest and buns and violence. So you should be always careful about it while dealing with. Then comes the disaster. You all know about the natural disasters. India is a country of natural disaster. It's a very vast country. We are regularly facing natural disasters like tsunami, sometimes cyclones, sometimes earthquakes, sometimes other like drought and floods. So these are some of the disasters which our country is facing, and now we are giving sufficient importance to the issue of disaster and how to deal with disaster. There is one point related to journalists also, and they should use these things and these ethical norms and principles and editorial guidelines while reporting disasters. Because whenever a disaster happens, whenever a disaster occurs in any part of the country, whole country wants to watch that. Whole country wants to know about that, because nothing is more newsworthy whenever a big disaster happens or occurs. So what are the issues, what are the ethical norms related to disaster coverage? The first thing is, don't create panic. So whenever a disaster occurs or happens, suppose cyclone or maybe tsunami, whatever, your news coverage should not be like that. They should not exaggerate things. They should not report anything out of proportion which may create panic among the audiences. So the first golden rule about reporting disaster is, don't create panic among audiences or people. Inform and educate people about that disaster, how they can save their lives, how can they can save their lives of their neighbors, how can they protect themselves during that disaster. Build confidence among your audiences about the disaster relief operations and about the government agency which may be trying to provide relief to the people. So creating confidence among people. Whenever disaster happens, generally what happens, people lost their confidence to fight against those natural disasters. So creating confidence among them is very important. The dead should be treated with respect. During disaster, so many people die during the disaster. But dead should be treated with respect and not shown unless there are compelling reasons for doing so. Particularly during the tsunami, if you remember, when tsunami hit India around 10 years back, when our news channels have shown dead people, it was severely criticized by people and the media critics, because it's basically you are playing with the emotions. You are not respecting dead bodies. Even when people are dead, they still deserve respect, dignity, and we must provide that dignity and respect to dead people. So never show their dead bodies while reporting disaster. Close-ups of faces and serious injuries should be used very sparingly. In fact, I would suggest that even the injured people showing their faces, their blood and the gory pictures should be avoided. And if we are using, you should use not moving pictures, but only those pictures which can be sorry, only those pictures which can be still pictures. A person should not learn from a radio or television report that a relative has been killed. Whenever you are reporting about disaster, you should not name the name of those people who were killed during this disaster, because informing people through television or through radio is not good idea. It is always better that authorities or their near and dear one should inform about that. Because whenever you inform through television or radio, it may create emotional panic and outburst among their kith and kin, nearest and dearest one. Don't put pressure on grieving relatives for interviews. Again, it's very important, particularly during the disaster when people are grieving. People are in a very bad state of mind, they are facing trauma, and at that time, as a journalist, you reach there and you insist people to give interview. It's not right thing to do. It's not ethical. It's not also humane. Basically it is issue of humanity. It is not a human behavior that when people are grieving and you are keeping your mic or you are insisting people that they should give interview to you, they should come on television. No way. In case of drought or cyclone, avoid putting crop losses in monetary terms until a figure is available from a reliable official source. Before that, you should not say that this much monetary loss has happened because of this disaster. Also, covering hostage, bombarding and terrorist threat. As you know, even in our country, we are facing such cases of terrorist threat and terrorist attacks and bombarding with regular intervals. So, and as you know, whenever these things happens, media give them 24-hour coverages. Last time, remember the 26/11, the way media covered it. So there are certain ethical norms and there are certain guidelines, editorial guidelines also about these things, and these are very, very important. The first thing is, journalists must ensure they do not endanger the lives of the hostages or interfere with the efforts of authorities to secure their release. So remember this, whenever you are dealing with a hostage crisis, suppose, as you remember, when Indian Airlines flight was taken hostage by some Taliban terrorists few years back, a decade old case, if you remember that. At that time, what happened, the way media covered it, it was very severely criticized, because the way media was covering whole thing, or take the case of 26/11, where in the hotel there were so many people were still there and terrorists were also there. At that time also it was criticized, the role of media was criticized because they were endangering the lives of people who are kept there or who are hostage there. And what you do, sometimes what media do, they start broadcasting or they start giving information about how security agencies or the police and other commandos are going to plan their operation and what they are doing in their operation, and this may also give information to the terrorists, because in 26/11 what happened, the masterminds of those terrorists were sitting in Pakistan, and they were directing those terrorists here in India through watching television channels in Pakistan, Indian television channels. That is why whenever you are broadcasting such things on television, you are also giving clue and hint to the terrorist or the hostage takers. So always remember that you should not interfere in the process of authorities who are trying to secure the release of hostages. They must guard against being used or manipulated by terrorist hostage seekers. No live or recorded broadcast of a statement by or an interview with a terrorist hostage taker or hostage should take place without authorization at a very senior level. This is again very important. Sometimes what happens, even during the 26/11 this was happened. One television interviewed the terrorists. I think this is outrageous. When terrorists have taken hostage people, and you are allowing terrorists to use media to pressurize the government, to argue their case in a very wrong manner. So I think whenever you face such situation, you should not use and you should not allow terrorists to use media platform to further their cause. It's very important, and because there are so many cases that whenever terrorists have attacked or terrorists have taken hostage, media were willingly given space to those terrorists and hostage takers to say their point of view. We should not allow them to manipulate media, because remember what Margaret Thatcher had said, that she has said during the height of terrorism in Britain, that media is basically oxygen of terrorists. Why terrorists are attacking? Why terrorists attack Mumbai, or why terrorists are bombing? They are not targeting those people. They are innocent. Whenever they are targeting innocent people, they are not targeting those people. They are targeting media. They want propaganda. That is why during the early 19th century, this was called this was the strategy of terrorists, and it was called in political science that this is propaganda by deeds. Terrorism is basically propaganda by deeds. They are trying to get mileage, they are trying to get publicity for their causes. That is why they are attacking, they are bombing, they are using hostages for furthering their cause. So always remember, avoid such things. In protected incidents and where hostages are involved, broadcaster must be aware of the danger that anything they say on air may be overheard by the kidnappers, hostage takers, as we have already discussed. They may use no live coverage. There should be no live coverage. After 26/11 and the experience of 26/11, we all know that whenever you go for live coverage, they may use this live coverage as knowing what are the tactics of the security agencies. Reporting must be strictly factual. So during the terrorist attack or bomb burning or hostage crisis, your reporting should be very strict, because as a media, it is our job to inform people whenever such things happen. I'm not saying that you should hide everything. No, you should report, but report factually. Never speculate. Do not speculate about what has happened or what may happen. It's a very outrageous. When you start speculating about what may happen, no, it may create panic. So journalists, camera crew must follow advice of the police about what they can report, so as not to exacerbate the situation. So you should not, whenever you are reporting about a terrorist incident, you should always follow the instruction of police or security agencies. Whatever the instruction they are giving because it's important for their operation. It's important for rescuing those hostages or securing the lives of the people. So you should always follow the instruction of security and police agency. Occasionally, the police may ask broadcasting organizations and the media to withhold or even include some piece of information. It's very important to understand what it means. Sometimes what happens when you are dealing with such crisis, terrorist crisis, a terrorist attack or bomb warning or hostage seeking, sometimes police may instruct your media organization or all the media organization you should, even if you know about something, that sometimes you may be knowing that which terrorist organization is involved. But if police is suggesting you, or police is instructing you, or police is directing you that you should not name the terrorist organization, or you should not name the who are involved in this, you should not inform your public about this, because this may be a strategy. Sometimes you may also include something in your broadcast which police may suggest. That sometimes what happens during the hostage crisis, whenever there may be a negotiation between police and hostage taker, and sometimes police may try strategically to use this occasion to say something through media to get credibility, which may not be true, but it may be very strategic, that that government is suppose sometimes police say that you should broadcast that government is ready to accept their demands. You should broadcast that. Even if it is not true, government is not going to accept their demands, but because police is saying, they may have some reason, because they may wanted to secure the hostages, because, and for that they may need to say this thing, because if police says directly to the hostage takers, that in that case they may not believe it. But if media is saying that government is ready to accept those demands, they may believe that yes, they may be true, and they may release hostages, and after that police may start their operation whenever they rescue the hostages. So in certain cases, strategically, you may have to follow the instruction of police also. News organizations sometimes receive telephone warnings from people claiming to have planted bombs. Pass on such warnings immediately to police and emergency service. Sometimes what happens in news organization, in newsrooms, you may receive a telephone call from someone who may be claiming that he belongs to a certain terrorist organization, and they have planted a bomb in a train, or maybe in a bus, or maybe in an aeroplane. That may be a hoax call, and that may be a true call also. So never take risk. Whenever you get any such call from an organization claiming that he belongs to such and such terrorist organization and they have planted a bomb, you immediately inform to police and emergency services instead of broadcasting that. You should not broadcast that. You first report to the police and emergency services, even if you have got it first time. It may be a breaking news, but never, I am using this 3 times, never broadcast it before informing police, because it may be a hoax call. Secondly, editors have to balance the need to inform and warn the public against the importance of not giving publicity to hoaxes. So whenever, because it may create panic. It may create panic among your audiences or the common citizens. So never broadcast such things. Do not normally report terrorist threats against particular individuals unless the threats have produced a serious or evident effect, the cancellation of public appearances. So never, suppose sometimes what happens, a terrorist threatens someone, they may have sent SMS or telephone call or a letter or email to someone or some individual or some politician or some bureaucrat that they will kill him or they will kill her. Never broadcast such thing till they may have cancelled some public function, or there may be some newsworthy reason. Before that, you should not report such thing, because what terrorist organization wants through this, they want propaganda, they want publicity. Dealing with ethical dilemmas. Now I am coming to the real question. Suppose you face ethical dilemmas. There may be, and almost every day you may be facing ethical dilemma in newsroom while reporting in the field, or maybe dealing with stories in newsroom. So how to deal with those ethical dilemmas? There are 2 approaches. One approach is the top-down approach, from the top down. Many editors take easy way out. Whenever an ethical problem is brought to their attention, they make the decision and implement it from top down. So whenever there is ethical dilemma, you report to the editor and editor takes decision that you should do this. This is called top-down approach, which means the boss may take decision how to deal with situation. This approach has the advantage of speed. It ensures that no deadlines will be missed. So whenever your editor takes decision, he takes any decision immediately because he is the boss. He can take any decision. So whenever editors take decision, the advantage is it is a speedier decision. You may not have to miss the deadline. But the disadvantage is that it treats decisions about ethics as if they were simple matters of enforcement of rules set down by the bosses. The decisions tend to be arbitrary and inconsistent over time. So this approach discourages initiative from lower level journalists to take decisions. So whenever we follow this top-down approach, when editors start taking decisions, in due course, in long time, those decisions may be very inconsistent, maybe sometimes very arbitrary, and it also discourages lower level journalists, maybe reporter, maybe sub-editors, to take decisions. And in certain cases, sometimes it may happen that that editor may not be available. He may not be in newsroom. In those cases, what those people who are in the newsroom, what they may do, because they have never taken any decision. So it always better. This top-down approach has some advantages, but what I would suggest that this top-down approach is not really a good approach. Instead of what we should do, we should go with bottom-up approach. That is, take decision from bottom-up. A bottom-up teamwork approach recognizes that ethics draw strength from the commitment of each person to the values that underlie the norms, which means ethics are largely self-enforced rather than imposed from above as if they were laws. No, ethics are not laws. They are basically voluntarily guidelines which we all must self-impose on ourselves. This kind of process recognizes that journalist is a teamwork. Journalism is a teamwork. So whenever you take decisions through bottom-up approach, which means you debate, discuss everything within your group, within your colleagues, and then come to a conclusion and take a decision. This way you also encourages your staff members, your lower level employees to be participate in decision making process. And the advantage of this approach is whenever they may face any ethical dilemma, they may be able to deal with such ethical dilemmas. So bottom-up approach is always better. What are the steps of taking ethical decision making? The first thing is consult colleague and editors. When confronted by an ethical problem as part of your work as a journalist, do not act alone. You must consult your colleagues and editor. First talk to a colleague, a fellow reporter, or your immediate supervising editor. Together decide whether the problem can be resolved at the level or should be dealt with by bringing in other colleagues with a specific responsibility in the news organization. So whenever you face any ethical dilemma, always consult your colleagues and editors. And if you think that you need to involve more people, you also ask others whenever you face such ethical dilemmas. Then define the ethical problem. So whenever you start discussing, the first thing any discussion is defining the ethical problem. Is it a question of right versus wrong? Because in certain ethical dilemmas, it is basically right and wrong. Or a more difficult question of right versus right. So there may be certain situation when you may be facing ethical dilemma where it is the question between choosing between two options. Both are right option, but which is more ethical? So in such situation, a case in which values may be in conflict. So think which value is involved and particularly about your organization giving a more weightage to which values. So also about goal of your news organization, plan your strategy accordingly. So if you think that truth is more important for your organization, suppose the value of truth or truth as a value is more important for your organization, then you must think the goal. Goal may be accurate reporting. And for accurate reporting, you must be cross-checking every information. So let us first define the ethical problem within the group. Then check codes and guides. The code of ethics of your professional organization can be a valuable guide. Even more useful is the ethics and standards manual of your news organization, if exists anyone. So in your organization, if you have any ethical guidelines or the written guidelines, you may use those code and guides for resolving those problems. Measure your journalistic objectives. In all cases, journalists should satisfy themselves that general ethical values such as seeking truth, acting independently, and minimizing harm have not been sacrificed or compromised in the pursuit of legitimate but non-ethical objectives such as speed, entertainment, brevity, increasing circulation, attracting advertisers, or beating the competition. These may be good objectives, giving information early as possible, but never compromise with your ethical norms. Identify stakeholders, people who might be affected by your decision. Then ask what are your alternatives, and finally make a decision. So think about all those alternatives which are important, which alternative is better one, and finally take a decision. It is not just whenever you have faced any ethical dilemma, it is not just about discussion, taking decision. You must take decision. So this is the way you can deal with ethical dilemma. And here I would like to conclude my discussion and request Amarendra ji, if you want to ask any question, I am open to take his questions.
Okay, I would like to ask one question more regard to discussion. What we find on the televisions, the discussion is all about to form an opinion, give your insight. But what happens, it's indeed at the level playing field. Some things, suppose some communal event happens. So what they do, they report it just in one line communal event, and they go digging past what the Congress party did, what the BJP did. So this way, this is not, people are not able to make a certain kind of, we say, opinion. Rather, they just come to know who did what in the past.
Yeah.
So my question is, to what extent, the proportion should be what?
Actually, whenever you are reporting a story related to such incidents, it's important that whenever you report current event, you may have certain times you may have to give background to understand the meaning of that story. But it should not be so lengthy and it should not be so long that instead of focusing on more on current topic or issue or incident, you should go in past. So because when you start digging past, there is no end, and that may confuse your audiences. So it's problematic. So always give background, give context, but not too much, which may burden your audiences and confuses them more.
Okay. So well friends, we are also not taking much time to burden all of you. So and with this note that we should be balanced in our approach while either filing a report or anywhere, it should be approached to in our life. So with this view in the lecture here, I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. Anand Pradhan giving such an insightful lecture on media ethics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.